Hello and welcome to the tutorial toolbox. My name is Tobias and this is Unity 101 episode 10. Last time we started on our second concept game, like for real. We added some player movement with the new Unity animation system called mecanim. And this time we are going to be adding enemies. And there's a lot to do when adding enemies, at least in this concept game. So we better get started. Um, we might turn this into two tutorials actually, but we'll see how time plays out. So first of all, we need somebody to play our enemy. So let's take the soldier uh, asset that we got, and now we can kind of move through him. So we gotta add a couple things. First of all, to our own player. Let's just minimize those. We gotta add, actually not this one. We gotta add a, first of all, a rigid body so that he can be affected by gravity and he can collide with things. We gotta freeze all rotations though, so that whenever we do bump into stuff and the likes, or when we apply forces, he won't just tip over, fall, and yeah. I set the mass to 90 because yeah, I like setting mass to 90. It makes sense to me. Also, we're gonna use this interpolate. Um, Earlier, we kinda went into what, well, not really because I wasn't quite sure what it does, but interpolate is the way collisions are detected, and when it's set to interpolate, the player can kind of, how do you explain it? The player doesn't like get this rigidy, bumpy feeling when you walk into stuff. When there's non-interpolate or extrapolate, sorry. Sometimes it might get really rigid and have some rough edges and stuff like that. And Unity actually recommends that for the player you want to use interpolate and just by default at least, and none on the others. Of course, if there's some, you can always play around with it and see what you feel best with, but let's just put it at interpolate. Then we need to add a physics capsule collider that's centered at zero point 0.9 with a height of 1.7 and a radius of 0.4. That's just the measurements for our player. And now our player is ready to collide with stuff, but this soldier also needs a collider, capsule collider. Same, zero point 0.4, zero point 0.9, 1.8. I did do 0.7 here, right? Yeah, 1.8. There we go. So now you can see when we run it, we can walk and we collide. It's not that smooth of a collision, but we do collide. We can't walk through him anymore, and at a point we reach his collider and we can't move any more forwards. So what we want to do is we want our player to be able to attack our enemies that is on the map. And actually, I was playing around with it just to see how we could do it, and I forgot to remove this attack parameter, as you can see. Let's just remove it for now. We'll use it later. I'll add it back in later. What we want to do is we want to go into our script on the player. That happens sometimes. I'm not quite sure why. So let's just open up again. Alright. So first of all, we want to create a new game object function that's called get nearest enemy. And what this function is going to allow us to do is going to allow us to find the enemy that is nearest to the player. Right now, there's only one enemy, but if we had more than one enemy, we wanted to be able to attack the one that we were actually closest to. Um, yeah, if you were to make something bigger and stuff like that, you might want to, for example, if you're finding projectiles, it's a lot easier because you would just fire the projectile and check whichever collider the projectile hits, and then just add damage to that guy. But for melee combat in a larger game scale operation, you would probably want to have some kind of fight animation. And like, for example, right now with this, if we stand close to two persons and we hit one, but we're actually closer to the other, even though the animation, well, we don't have the attack animation, but if we had, the animation would show we hit one person, but we were actually damaging the other. We would probably want to do something with colliders on the arms and stuff like that, more advanced stuff. But for now, this is going to do get nearest enemy. And what we want to do is we want to create a new game object called nearest and set it to null. Then we want to for each game object enemy in game object dot find game objects with tag enemy. Let's just open this up wide. Let's if nearest is equal to null. I'll explain what this does in a second. Or vector 3 the distance transform that position. There's gotta be the small transform, the one that corresponds to our player. So the distance in 3D space between our player and nearest that actually enemy that transform that position. If this is less than vector 3, the distance transform that position, comma, nearest the transform that position. Nearest is equal to enemy, and then here return nearest. So what this function does is that we create a new game object to store the nearest enemy in. Then for each game object, in game object, find game objects with tag enemy is basically all the game objects in the game that has the tag enemy. If you don't have the enemy tag, click add tag and write in enemy in one of the elements. So make this one enemy. So every game object in the game that has the tag enemy is going to run through those, and then it's going to check if the nearest is null. So if it's the first iteration, so if nobody's nearest yet, then it's going then it's going to set the nearest equal to the first enemy that it finds. Or if it isn't null, Then if vector 3 the distance, this basically calculates how far away in 3D space two transform positions, so two positions are. So if the distance between our player and the current enemy that it has found is less than the distance between our player and the one that we currently think is the nearest, then we set the nearest to be the enemy that we just found because it's nearer. And then when it's all done, it's going to return either the nearest enemy, or if there isn't any enemies, then it's going to return null. So now we have a way of finding the nearest enemy. So let's put that to use. Let's make a section for attacking. We're just gonna make it really simple, and let's attack. Sorry about that. Get key down, key code dot space. So whenever we click the spacebar, we are going to attack, and sorry, vector 3 dot distance transform position. And actually we gotta no. So if you click space, we want to attack. If get nearest enemy is not equal to null. So we only want to attack if there is an enemy, and then we only want to attack if the distance between transform that position and get nearest enemy that transform that position is less than or equal to attack range. Make a public float variable called attack range. Set it to 1. Let's set it to 1.5 actually. Just you can play around with how far away you want to be in order to be able to attack, but this is up close melee combat as far as I've found out. Alright, so right now nothing happens. Let's just debug log attacking. So now whenever we attack, if there's an enemy within our range, the debug log, the console should say something, and F, sorry. Alright, the debug, the console should say attacking. So I'm pressing space, nothing happens because I'm too far away. Moving closer, still nothing. Closer, attacking. I'm standing right on him, I'm attacking. You can see here that the number goes up because I'm gonna keep on attacking. Alright, so now we need to play the animation when we're attacking. We don't have an attack animation though, unfortunately. So I am just going to use a jumping animation. But if you want to, you could create a real animation if you want one. So I shortened this down quite a bit. You can see normally it's 40 seconds long, but I made it like 1 or 2 seconds, 2 seconds long. And loop time, of course. Actually, that doesn't even matter really because we're not gonna loop it. It's only gonna play once. But we want a trigger parameter that's called attacking, and make a transition between attack, idle and attack, and the transition is on the attacking trigger, and then also make a transition back, but you'll just leave that one. And then in here, instead of debug log attacking, we will do anim.set trigger attacking. This one doesn't take an input because the trigger works like that is a boolean, but it's only active for a very short time. So it's active and then it's off again. But that's enough time for a transition to happen. And that's exactly what we want, like for something to happen once and only once. So we click, and the animation is interesting because I forgot to put it in. Sorry about that. Let's put in the motion. This should make it better. Go up to him, and that's our attack animation. You can see it switches off really fast and plays the animation. You can see it turns a little bit. We might not want that, but that's how the animation is done. And we can't really do anything about that unless we wish to redo the animation. Actually, we could see if this works. Now it still rotates. Maybe that's because it's around the Y. I don't know. But yeah, we could use another animation or something. Alright, so now we can attack the enemy, but how much time do we have? Alright, that took a lot longer than I had expected. So we can attack the enemy now. We have the enemy set in and stuff like that. We haven't really done that much, I'm sorry, but next time in the second part of this tutorial, we will give the enemy health so that when we damage him enough, he will die and be destroyed from the world. And we will also, maybe next time or maybe in a third part, make it so that our player can take damage and that the enemies can attack our player so that it won't be all one-sided. Alright? So thank you guys for watching. It's been a pleasure. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to stay tuned. And when we reach 10 subscribers, I'm going to start a new series on programming. So please subscribe if you want to see that too. And we will also soon start our series. After this concept series, we will start a series on how to actually make a game. And we will make our very own game from scratch. That will be fully playable. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next